As I've already pointed out, Merriam-Webster's online dictionary defines just as conforming to a standard of correctness. What does that mean in the real world?
I think your fallback position or your main position is just compensation under the Constitution requires fair market value.
Correct.
If I disagree with that, and I believe just compensation should be defined the way Justice Scalia did in BDP, which is what's reasonable under the circumstances. And I believe that a valid auction is a reasonable compensation. You lose on your main argument, correct?
We would, if you do not believe that fair market value is the standard, correct.
Mr. Liu argued for the United States as amici. While claiming not to support either side, his argument on this point clearly appears to support Isabella County's position.
According to petitioner, compensation should instead reflect a property's fair market value. But as this court recognized in BFP, foreclosed property is simply worth less.
Which is the point. Governments have used the power to foreclose to artificially depress the perceived value of property in order to exercise eminent domain at a discount. What about foreclosure makes a $200,000 property worth only $76,000? Nothing. The person who bought the property at auction simply made a $76,000 investment to acquire a $194,000 property, a nice $118,000 unrealized profit.
Except for someone did, shortly after the auction, buy the property for the prior $194,000. Doesn't that give rise to some reason to be concerned about the procedures that your client used?
No, Your Honor. The procedures here have been the historic process that have been used since the beginning of the Republic.
Not a bad payday for whoever bought that property. It also proves the point that simply because a property has been foreclosed on, its market value does not automatically decline. So why is Isabella County fighting this so hard?
Petitioner's approach would defy that reality and spell the end of tax sales in this country.
Because governments want to be able to take people's homes? Or is it they don't really care about the equity people lose, or as long as the government gets its tax dollars? Justice Thomas looked at this from a different point of view.
What was the assessed value on which the tax was imposed?
The assessed value here was approximately $194,000.
Can petitioner use that as a basis for its disagreement with the foreclosed sale value?
Interesting question. You see, Union Township valued the property at $194,000 before the foreclosure, not after it. Of course, the original valuation by the township was for the purposes of imposing taxes, so they would benefit from a higher valuation. Could this be a basis for Mr. Punk's disagreement?
Justice Thomas, we do not believe so, because if the measure of the property's value is at the time of the taking, it's either, if the taking is the surplus proceeds, then the amount of the surplus proceeds is what's taken. If the property value is the equitable interest in the property at the time that the right of redemption expired, the property was no longer worth the assessed value under market conditions, because the property was in foreclosure and the right of redemption had not been exercised, such that the value of the equitable interest in the property had diminished to a forced sale value, which we believe is the teaching from BFP.
So the value decreased approximately $120,000 in that short period.
Remember, the alleged decrease in the value of the property had nothing to do with the property itself. It was wholly created by Ms. DePriest and the township for its own benefit, the collection of taxes that a court had found to be unlawful.
We believe that the property decreased in value by a very significant amount between the time of the assessment and the time of the foreclosure, or the expiration of the right of redemption, because of the non-payment of the tax. No reasonable buyer out in the market would acquire the property at the moment of the taking here for the $194,000.
Except, as Justice Gorsuch has already pointed out, someone did acquire the property for the full $194,000 valuation shortly after the auction.